Welcome to Life on Bourbon, the podcast. I'm Armando Leduc, creator of the sitcom Life on Bourbon. Every week, we'll pull back the curtain on the show, filmmaking craft, bourbon street mythology, character arcs, and real stories that inspired our wildest scenes. We'll talk lenses and line reads, budgets and bar fights, with cast, crew, and a few French Quarter legends. If you love creativity, story structure, and a little NOLA chaos, you're in the right bar. Grab a seat, let's roll. What's up, everybody? The first podcast episode of Life on Bourbon. And we put this podcast together because I think a lot of filmmakers and a lot of people want to know how you make an independent film these days, because it's so different than what it used to be and how people get picked up and distributed. Right here, I have my co-host, Aria, and then Jeffrey. Patrick edited the piece, and then Will Brooks over here plays Simon and helped produce the piece as well and helped in the writing of it too. So what's up, guys?
What's up, man?
Happy to be here.
Yeah,
I also edited that intro you just saw. Really happy to have
editor himself. So y'all are both cinephiles.
I mean, look at our backgrounds. You can just tell.
Yeah. It was one of those things that I think when people start working here at the other company, Leduc Entertainment, I think, that driving force of wanting to tell stories. And me and Will, we met doing theater.
Mm-hmm. 20-something years ago.
So we knew storyline was something that we were both interested in. I remember we were writing a script back in the day. What was it, Karma?
Yeah.
We spent a good 2 weeks on it?
A couple of weeks on it, and then we just got put aside. Other things happening. Life happens,
What was the premise?
It was a couple of guys that it's funny to think about now. The considering who we work with now and at Leduc Entertainment, it was a couple of guys who had won like a lawsuit, like a personal injury type lawsuit, and got a bunch of money and just sat on the money, lived off of it for years, and they weren't working or anything, and they would tell women that they were going to make a movie. They were making a movie, and they wanted them to come in and audition for the movie, and they'd video them in the movie, and then inevitably they would do the casting couch routine with these women. This was pre-cancel culture. This was pre-Harvey Weinstein and all that stuff. Yeah. And then just the hijinks that ensue behind that, and them getting caught in it, and then ended up having to actually follow through and actually make a movie when they weren't really planning on ever doing it. Right. And they run out of money, and karma ends up biting them in the ass in the end. That's why it was called Karma.
And they got theirs in the end.
Not a movie that would fly today in the cancel culture that we live in.
I think as long as people get their comeuppance at the end.
Oh yeah, they definitely got their comeuppance.
Yeah,
one of them ends up in jail,
right?
And one of them ends up working as a janitor somewhere. Like they don't, nothing. The two main characters don't have a happy ending in this story. Yeah,
right. And so I think if you're telling a story these days like that, and look, I think it's cyclical too. There's more irreverence being thrown into projects these days, So yeah, it's partially why we're doing Life on Bourbon, because it's it's an irreverent comedy, right?
For sure.
I wanted a story about Bourbon Street, but then because I worked on Bourbon Street for 8 years, on and off, as an MC and as a singer, and all the craziness that happened during my 20s and 30s. But I'm in my 40s now, and I run a marketing agency, a video production company, and there's stories about that. And so I said, when I had written it 18, 20 years ago, it was a different perspective. And so I really wanted to infuse those old stories into the show, but I also wanted to throw in the stories of what it's like being a marketing agency. And so I brought those two worlds together, and I thought it came out pretty good in terms of,
Yeah. I'm really happy with how it came out.
Yeah. So let's talk about Will's character for a second, and how we developed it, and what you sort of did in terms of acting, and and how you're approaching the acting technique.
Yeah, well, we goof around a lot. Like, even when we're working like on work stuff, we tend to get goofy, and I like to do voices.
Really
And,
good at it.
There's this voice that I would do every now and then when we were on calls, cut the tension, kind of bring some levity into the room. It was this effeminate, I think I called him, he was like an effeminate high school theater teacher, but was not gay, but certainly one thought he was gay, and he had the Southern lispy voice, and I'd done that you've heard me do that for years. I do that all the time. I've done it for a long time. And you wrote this character out, and you're like, I want you to do that voice, do that voice. And so that's kind of what I brought to it. It's kind of changed a little bit though as we were doing it. It kind of, I don't know. There's a gruffness to this guy who's also very effeminate, right? Like he's short fuse, can snap at but call him the Velvet Hammer, but clearly the guy's got a short fuse. Pops off
a guy
all the time.
who seems soft on the outside, but you don't want to mess with.
Yeah. But it was fun. I love playing characters. And when you start with a voice, acting wise, if you have a voice, you can that kind of informs everything else that you're going to do, because you have the voice, and then you can kind of find the words that work for that voice. So when you're thinking about what would this guy say here, you can say things out loud in that voice and figure out what's funny, what's not, what works, what's real. And then that leads into posture and how you walk and all that stuff. And then what you wear and the kind of clothes you wear. I've had a good time going out and finding the crazy loud ass shirts that Simon wears in the show. So like that was, but it all starts with that one thing, and then that kernel, and then you just kind of build off of it. Everything else, it was super fun to do. I tell you, doing that, we did it. We did our first batch of shooting in 5 days.
Yeah.
And then we came back and did 2 more days later. So we spent 7 days doing this. Doing that voice for 7 days straight was man, it was hard I was glad to kind of put it to bed and be like, okay, I'm gonna put him away for a little while, because it's when you start talking like that, and if you've seen the show, you know what Simon sounds like, but it's hard to kind of turn that off and just be like, let me be real again.
I know, because you're like, when you're doing a voice, like it's hard to turn it off after you've done it for a while, because like lately,
like Armando does a voice in the show too. Your character is you've got your accent, your Spanish, your Latino accent, and but between takes, we would all be talking, and Armando would be talking in his character's voice, and I'd be talking in my character's voice, but we wouldn't be running lines. We'd just be talking. Like the voice is still happening, because it's hard. You have to kind of, because you got to jump right back in and do it again. So you kind of have to keep that going, because it's difficult to jump in and out of that. So once you're it's not really method acting, but it's if it's a voice, it's just easier to keep it going, so you can start over again. So
do you find it easier as an actor to put on a character than to kind of be in that Will Brooks voice?
I think it depends on the script, right? It really depends on the writing. I did a play earlier this year. Is a play called The Shark Is Broken. It's about the making of Jaws. And I played Roy Scheider, who's one of the actors in the movie Jaws. And there's no voice to that. There's nothing like that. And I really enjoyed it. It was super fun, super gratifying, like creatively fulfilling. And he's a straight man in the play. The other 2 actors who played Richard Dreyfuss and Robert Shaw, they were like big and brash and neurotic and loud. And I'm the peacekeeper. It's a 3-man play. And I just kept the peace and kind of kept it even keel. I got one moment where he blows his top, but other than that, he's leaving. He's just kind of keeping the peace throughout the whole play. And it was super fun. There's no voice to it. He's just a regular guy.
You didn't look up, his voice and see what he was.
It didn't really call for that, because he has a little bit of a New York accent, but I was just like, I'm just gonna play it straight. And these other 2 characters are really carrying the weight of the show. I'm just kind of the peacekeeper who's just kind of keeping these guys from killing each other. And that was super fun. But to answer your question, I would rather play a character where you can find those layers and add all those little things to it and do the weird things. And it's way more fun. I think it's more fun on a film set to do it that way, because it's such a change from where you are. Plays different, theater's different thing, right? Because you're doing the whole thing nonstop. There's no cuts. You know this, Armando.
And also you have to project to the back row of the theater.
Yeah, it's a more internalized thing. Although Simon, the character of Simon, was not very small or internalized, but none of the characters in this show were very small or internalized. But yeah, I think I would rather play a character and kind of find a voice or find a physical tick that might be, you know, I don't know. It informs when you find those little, for me as an actor, when I can find those little things, it just informs every decision that you make as an actor. When you are playing kind of that straight man, regular character that might be just more of like me, that's a lot more vulnerable of a position to be in.
Yeah.
Right. Because you're really putting a lot of yourself into what you're doing.
Yeah. I find when I'm acting and I can put on an accent, I separate myself.
Yeah.
From that character. I'm wondering if you had that same experience on The Shark Is Broken. Did it feel like Will Brooks doing that, or did you feel like that character, and what helped you get into that character? Even though you weren't using a voice, you had to feel like you were there.
Well, like with something like that, like that play is somewhat based in fact, right? It's somewhat of a true story. I mean, it's based on a true story. There's a lot of fictionalization that comes in there. It's written by one of the Robert Shaw, who plays the character, the fisherman, the shark hunter in Jaws. His son wrote this play. And his, you know, he was like 9 years old when his dad died, but he wrote this play about the experience these three actors had on this boat making Jaws. So the whole thing takes place in the cabin of the boat that they're on. But yeah, I mean, you do research. There's several documentaries out there about Jaws, about the making of Jaws, and there's footage of Roy Scheider being interviewed and talking about his experience. So you can do that kind of stuff and see that. And I didn't watch the movie while we were shooting, because that's the character that he played. I'm playing the real guy. So I didn't watch. We did. I'll take that back. The three of us, we all went to see Jaws together in the theater because it had been re-released. But that was it. But yeah, I watched a lot of documentaries about the making of the movie. I found archival interview footage of Roy Scheider from just other interviews that he had done before he died, just to kind of get a feel for who he was as a person, and try to kind of inject some of that. But it wasn't an impression. I wasn't doing an impression. That was not what I wanted to do. So there was separation for sure. But at the same time, like, one of the things if I'm acting in a role like that, it's a note that I got long time ago from a director. Still one of my favorite notes I've ever been given. Gave it to the whole cast of the show that I was in, was, when you're on stage, when you're acting, do what people really do. React the way that a person would really react. If this kind of thing happened, don't, like, if someone slaps you in the face, how would you react as Will? Do that on stage, because that's how most people are going to react. So just always remember to do what people really do. And that's just kind of what I bring to it. That's kind of my style of acting that I try to do, is like, and I guess really it's what it boils down to is do what I would really do, as opposed to what people would really do. So you're always injecting some of yourself, even when I'm doing Simon and or a crazy voice, or when I'm doing like that sketch we did, the Jason Statham, all right. Like, I'm still bringing myself into all that stuff. I think you do the same thing, Armando. Yeah. I think as an actor, if you're a decent actor, you can't help but bring yourself into the character. It's just,
I mean, Denzel Washington, Tom Hanks. I mean, those guys.
I love Denzel Washington. You watch most of his movies, he's the same in every movie. He's playing Denzel Washington. Yeah,
that's what they're hiring, right?
Yeah, exactly.
That stereotype, that trope.
And I don't mean that as a knock. The dude's incredible. I love Denzel Washington, but he's not. There's not a lot of, he's. Malcolm X is kind of a different level of stuff that he did, but most of his movies, he's just kind of doing the Denzel.
Not gonna be a Will Ferrell buffoonery actor.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Like, he's just not going to do that. I love how you are down to clown, right?
Yeah.
It's one of those things that I think, in my opinion, makes a good actor is the ability to let go completely and like you said, do what the role calls for, because not most times, every time you see a show or a movie, it's really based on one of the worst times or an exciting time or an adventure. Like nobody's making a movie about an everyday boring,
It's heightened. Everything's heightened. Yeah.
Right. Everything's heightened on that day. I mean, right. It's like, okay, if Star Wars was a movie about them having breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and there was nothing really happening, who would watch this movie?
That's like the prequels to Star Wars. It was like there were several scenes that were like C-SPAN. I was like, what are we doing? Why are we watching the Galactic Senate talk for 20 minutes? This is C-SPAN. I don't want to watch this.
Be real.
But valid. You know what I mean? Like it's heightened. And that's one of the things that I learned. And I read the book How to Save the Cat by Blake Snyder, which is a fantastic book. But it really does, like once you write the story, it has this the back end of the book goes, okay, how are we rewriting this? How are we making the villain more of a villain? How are we infusing conflict into every scene? And if there isn't conflict in every scene, you're doing something wrong, right? There has to be something that somebody is fighting for. Otherwise, what is the purpose of having the scene? It doesn't move the story forward at all. So you've got to infuse conflict at every point, in every scene. And I love in the book where he talks about there's a plus and a minus, right? And what he's talking about is if the scene starts off in a positive way, then you better end it in a negative way. And then
vice versa.
Negative, right, and positive. And through when you're putting the board up and you have your index cards up, you can see plus, minus, 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 plus, 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 minus, right? And this gives that the scene, the roller coaster ride.
Yeah.
If it's always like, and then it's like downtrodden.
Have you seen the video of Trey Parker and Matt Stone, the guys from South Park?
No.
Of them talking about how they do story development. There's someone videoed this. They're talking about their philosophy of story development, because they write that stuff week to week. It's amazing what those guys do when they're making an episode of South Park. They do it in 10 days. They write it, they animate it, they do the recordings in 10 days, and it comes out. And sometimes they'll change it the night before because of some news thing that happens. But so he's talking about their writing. I have to send it to you because I can't remember exactly what he says. But like when they're talking, moving from scene to scene, instead of thinking this happens and then this happens, their word is therefore. This happens, therefore this will happen next.
Ooh,
therefore this will happen next. So you just change that terminology and you think about like this, it's cause and effect really is I think what it really boils down to. I'll send you the clip, but it's really interesting how they approach story. And it's that this happens, therefore this happens.
Yeah.
As opposed to, and then
really,
that way it's all connected.
I love that. I love that approach. And in acting too, right? Like you were talking about, okay, how do you get to that next moment before, because as an actor what's coming.
Yeah.
How do you stay in the moment and not pre-act the reaction, right? And it's that what you're talking about, right? It's this like, okay, this is what's happening right now. React to just that.
Oh yeah.
We can get here, then we can get here, then we can get there.
It's all about this right here for me for acting is listening.
Sure.
It's listening and reacting. That's 90% of it is listening to what the person's saying and then reacting to what they're saying. And if the script's good, the reaction will make what you're saying will make sense for the reaction.
And it was, I'll bring it back to, and I loved, and this is something that I hope somebody can take away in the filmmaking process. And if you're there writing a script, because this is one of the big things that we had a problem with Life on Bourbon, when we first wrote the first episode, is the ending was just weak.
Yeah,
it was so weak, and it was just like, what are we doing? It's like there was no build up to anything, and I remember it was me, you, Nick, and Aaron. And I was in Philly. I think I was in Philadelphia. Yeah,
I think you were.
And I was like, we've got to clean up this ending. And so we sat and we thought about, okay, what are we building towards, right? And the minute we figured out what we're building towards and how we're going to end it, that dictated everything that happened at the front end.
Before, yeah.
And so
the idea of starting at the end is interesting.
And so I think it was a huge lesson for me, and one that I'm cognizant of as I'm writing, episodes 2 and 3, is that, okay, it's fun to put in the story. It's fun to throw in all the quips and the funniness and all of that. To me, that's all toppings, right? If we don't know how this thing is going to end and we don't know what we're building towards, then you're gonna leave the audience feeling flat, right? And they're not. And so what I'm learning real time is that when I worry about how it's going to end, then everything else can build up, and it's also part of improv, right? When you're doing improv and you're doing comedy, everything works in threes. Everything's all about the heightening, right? Yep. Like if it's here, you better go here, and then you better go here. Like it just you can't go here and then maybe just a little, and then there's got to be levels to this. And when you see it, it's like that keeps the audience on the train and keeps the audience wanting to continue watching the piece, right? Yeah. So that's one of the things that if you guys are, what is this? Go shoot it at Bobo.
Go shoot your grandfather.
Go shoot your grandmother with them. But yes, that's one thing that, if you're a filmmaker and you're like, man, I'm trying to figure out how to get this script written, or maybe the script is written and it feels weak. I would really look at that ending and see where you're trying to go.
Yeah.
Therefore, because everything up to that will change. Like it changed everything.
Yeah. The order, some scenes we kept, but the order changed. And we had to create new scenes to feed into it. Yeah. Like that scene we did that you and I and Hargraves have in her office was completely changed up. Based on what you decided to do in the ending. That is honestly, that scene is, I think that's my favorite scene in the pilot.
Oh, it's good.
Is the scene in her office with me, you and her and what's his name, the bodyguard,
Fontana.
Yeah,
yes. Fontana.
Yeah, that was my favorite scene that's my favorite scene in the show. Writing wise, like it worked really well. It was really good banter back and forth, and there was some quips that cut in, but it served the story and it led up to the conclusion. Like it set up the last scene, which was, holy shit, y'all, don't try to shoot a 20-page bar scene in one night.
Oh, that was another thing. I mean, just look, I've always written that way with a massive cast and a lot of people in the scene. And Kevin, who directed it, and we'll have him on too, but he was telling me, he was like, Armando, don't change that, because that's something that you do, right? And that's something that if that's what the story calls for. Because I was like, man, I'm just going to write 2-3 person scenes. That's it. And he's
I think it was ambitious, and I think that scene is cool because it's all over the place, and we've got stuff happening, and we were in an actual location, an actual bar, but just the actual trying to do it. Did we do it in one night, or was it 2 nights we were there?
It was 2 nights.
Two nights. But it was still that last scene was a third of the script.
We were up like past.
Yeah, it was a lot to try to cram in, but I'm glad we did it, and I think it works really, really well. But maybe we got to spread it out a little more. I don't know as far as the schedule goes, but it was a lot, and we had to come back and end up coming back and do some pickups and finish some scenes we didn't get done.
And that's something that we learned too. Here's something for the filmmakers out there: make sure that you guys plan out what the day is going to consist of. We did it in Baton Rouge, but we didn't do it when we got into the club, and that's when things just kind of
fell apart.
And so, not to mention there was a deluge, and my house got flooded.
Oh God!
And then
we had a cast member who got rolled.
And he showed up. Like, we had to get some IVs for him on the set. It was crazy. Crazy. We'll talk about that. We'll go into some behind the scenes, but I got Jeffrey. I want to get Jeffrey. On to talk about the edit and how you approach the edit, because it's massive, right? When you're looking at this piece, how are you? So when you're approaching the edit, right, in the script, how are you what are you starting with first? What is the things that you're looking at? How are you approaching the edit?
Well, I mean, basically, I took it on a scene-by-scene approach. So I just go through all the footage, and I'm kind of a stickler for continuity because I like to make sure this thing flows into the next thing and all that. And what I try to do is I try to find the best performance and the best takes and the best stuff that can cut together in a way that flows. And obviously, I'm not always going to get it right the first time. And that was something that Kevin, when we sat down and looked over the edit, something he really helped with was tightening up the pacing and the flow of a lot of the comedy. Because something I learned from him is that it helps to just let things breathe more, like give the jokes some extra time to land and that sort of thing. So yeah,
I like that.
Yeah, I think that timing is everything, is a real thing, and sometimes it's got to be a fast cut, and sometimes you have to kind of let things land. If it's an awkward moment, you got to kind of live in that awkwardness, and the edit can provide for that. But sometimes it's just jokes that just need to go bing bang bing bang. It just depends on the style of that comedy and what it is.
There was only one scene in the edit that I had to do a lot of trimming to, and that was the scene with you. What was the artist's name? Stephanie. Was it? And Simon. That was the only scene that I really had to do a lot of trimming to, because originally that scene was like maybe twice as long as it is in the final edit. And there was a lot of banter between you two, and you gave free range to just cut that down to the basics, just get to the important stuff, and it flows. And I'm really impressed because like you wouldn't know watching it with going in, not knowing anything, that it was originally a lot longer, and it just really helps.
Yeah, I mean, as we unpack this podcast, I know this is episode 1, but I'm already starting to see what this podcast could be, because I think our audience is going to be filmmakers, probably a lot. People trying to go, okay, how am I going to get my project up and running? We can talk about funding. We can talk about how we got people to give up locations for us, and how we ended up getting catering, and how we ended up getting actors, and how we ended up.
Because like that bar we shot out, that bar was just about to go through some kind of facelift.
It's a strip club.
I actually walked by it with Jimmy when I was in town a couple weeks ago, and it's the sign's still up, still says frat house. Windows are all papered over. You can't see inside, but they're working on it, I guess. But it's just an empty shell right now. So we're gonna have to find a new bar for the future.
Well, and we left it open for that reason.
Yeah,
I knew when I was writing it, I was like, I know I didn't want to write it where we were stuck somewhere, because what if we weren't able to get it back? So and glad I wrote it that way, because now we can kind of play. But just like anything, I think getting the first one done was super important. And we definitely learned a lot from the first one. So, things to do, things not to do, things that we can do to keep momentum up. If you guys are out there and you guys are like, man, I want to, tell my story and what marketing is and all of that, this is why we're doing this podcast, really, is so that we can keep creating content around the show until the show comes out, and we have something weekly that we can put out to people, and then, keep building the audience up. So where people are like, oh, I want to know about this. So with that being said, if you guys want to know if you guys have questions about how we made it, marketing questions, funding questions, shooting questions, editing questions, acting questions. I mean, there's catering questions, how we did it logistically, pod producing, script writing, like the whole 9. If you guys have questions about how we got this thing done, let us know. We will be doing this weekly with, like I said, different cast members, different behind the scenes people, some producers, some of the people that helped fund the project. We're gonna have some people from Bourbon Street too come in and talk about their stories, and maybe that'll make it into subsequent episodes, which will be kind of fun. So
you gotta get Catherine on here to talk about what happened to him.
1,000%.
If he wants to share.
I think it's a good story. But with that being said, thank you guys for tuning in to the first episode of the Life on Bourbon podcast. Super interested in seeing how this goes and what it becomes. Because, when you first start something to what it looks like 6 months, a year from now, I mean, shoot, a year from now, what it'll look like, who knows, right? Could be really.
Was it a year ago that we were like, you were like, we're doing this?
Yes.
No more talk. This is happening. We put it on the calendar, and then 3 months later, cameras were rolling. So
yeah,
I think that for me, like that's the lesson for this first episode. People that are out there is, if you want to do it, put it on the calendar, make it a real thing, and it's going to be 1,000 times more likely to actually happen. You can talk about it and talk about it and talk about it, but like commit, put a date down. We're doing it on this day. And then you kind of are beholden to your calendar and you have to make it happen. So,
I mean, shit, like with this podcast, I was, somebody, Pedro gave me the idea. He was like, why don't you guys start a podcast about it? That way you guys can have content around the sitcom before it comes out. And I was like, yeah, that's a really good idea. And it just was an idea for 4 months till I was like, no, I'm going to schedule the first episode, which I did. I was like, Jeffrey, I need you to come up with the intro and outro, please. Because we're doing it on this day. It was supposed to be Monday. We did it Friday, but we're still here. Still got it done. So with that being said, man, shoot, let's keep it rolling. I appreciate you guys for being here, and I'm sure this won't be the last time.
I'm not coming back. I'm done. You got all you're gonna get out of me. I'm finished.
I'd be happy to come back.
Hosting the show next week. I will be in Vail, but
I guess I'm hosting next week. Okay, cool.
Yeah,
good to know.
So we'll figure out.
I'll see if I can get Catherine to come on here.
Oh, good. And the cool thing is we're recording it for now. So we're gonna put the episodes up on Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube, the whole nine, and we'll cut clips from it. So
all right,
works for me.
All right, y'all. Appreciate it. Look, this works over here. Hey.
It's not working for me. I don't know why.
Yeah, I'm not even
going to try. Thumbs down gives you the
none of that stuff works for me. It doesn't.
I think my camera just hates me.
What does that mean?
I don't know. It doesn't do anything.
I don't think it does anything.
Yeah.
There it goes.
Yeah. Those are the special effects you get from Life on Bourbon. We're spare no expense.
Spare no expense. All right, guys. Have a good rest of your week. Hopefully you guys had a good Merry Christmas
and a happy New Year's coming around the corner.
Coming right around the corner.
Crazy time on Bourbon Street New Year's for sure.
Lock and load, babies.
Later.
Talk soon.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of Partnership.